Alonso has seen a spectacular return to F1. The two-time world champion set a new record during the French Grand Prix. No one else has driven so many laps in Formula One history. But it isn't the amount of laps driven that makes his return so spectacular. No, it is his incredible race craft. When seven-time world champion Michael Schumacher and one-time world champion Kimi Raikkonen came back from their sabbatical, they never reached the same high level of performance as before. Experts and criticasters claim that Alpine made a big mistake by contracting Alonso after his sabbatical instead of a young, talented driver. 1.5 years later, and these same people compliment Alonso's fighting spirit and race craft. Fernando was a bit unfortunate at the beginning of the 2022 season with 2 DNFs and only 1 point finish in the first 5 races. However, ever since, Alonso has scored 7 consecutive point-finishing positions and has the better of his much younger teammate. Yet, Alonso's last race win dates back 9 years ago during the Spanish Grand Prix. With 2 world titles, 32 race wins, and 22 pole positions, Alonso is one of the most successful F1 drivers in history. But it has always been Alonso's dream to win another race before he retires. But time starts to be against him. Alonso is 41 and maybe only has a good 2 years left if Alpine extends his contract at the end of this year. So will Alonso ever win his 33 race win? Alpine is definitely making progress and seems to be the 4th team at the moment. Alpine keeps on bringing more and more updates and is working hard on closing the gap with the top teams. But are they closing in? Will Alonso ever have a real chance of winning another race? How much did Alpine gain or lose out on the top teams this season? Let's find out. Alpine has been restructuring their team for quite some years now. When they signed Alonso 2 years ago, they saw him as the ultimate missing piece to lead the team to race wins again. Together with Ocon, Alonso has been bringing the team back to the front of the midfield. They are still far away from the top runners, but they have secured their place as the 4th constructor. However, Alpine still loses out between 1 to 1.5 seconds per lap on the front runners. So where do they lose all this time? When we look at the official data published from the Formula One after the French Grand Prix, we can see 2 crucial parts of the track where Alpine lost a lot of time. They lost a tremendous amount of time in the first and last sector, which are notorious for their slow, medium, and high-speed corners. The time lost in the high-speed corners is just 0.3, whereas Alpine loses out almost 0.8 in the slow and medium-speed corners. How is this possible? Compared to Red Bull and Ferrari, Alpine misses out a lot on mechanical grip. Mechanical grip is the grip of the car caused by the friction of tire rubber and abrasive road surfaces. Mechanical grip is influenced by the tires and suspension. Although all teams use the same tire compounds, there is a variance in how effectively these tires are put to use. At the beginning of the year, there was much to do about the suspension of the cars. Some opted to use a pull rod system, whereas others used a push rod suspension. The reason for the difference in suspension is because teams think they will gain an aerodynamic and mechanical advantage. Ferrari is notorious for its mechanical grip this year and has been dominating the slow corners. Alpine, however, is quick on the straight lines, but gives up on corner speed. If we want to figure out whether Alonso has a realistic chance of winning at least one more Grand Prix in his career, we have to understand how Alpine has been developing their car. Alpine has opted to introduce many but smaller updates to the races. However, there was a major update introduced during the Silverstone Grand Prix. This update consisted of a new floor, a new engine cover, and new side pods. Alpine has looked quite closely at the designs of Ferrari and Red Bull and therefore increased the size of the bottom part of the side pods. By doing so, they allowed themselves to wrap the bodywork more tightly around the other components. The top part of the bodywork now follows the same pattern as Ferrari, and Alpine added similar cooling holes. By doing so, they increased the aerodynamic performance and reduced drag. Alpine also changed the placement of the exhaust. Due to the chassis changes on the middle part of the car, they raised the position of their exhaust to get more aerodynamic performance out of the car. Further improvements were made to the floor, where they changed the angle of the rear part of the floor to improve the airflow towards the diffuser in an attempt to improve overall downforce. The big upgrade package introduced in Silverstone definitely worked well, as Alpine found themselves further up the field, with Alonso securing P5 in Silverstone and Ocon securing P5 in Austria. Alpine's surge to improve their car didn't stop at the Silverstone Grand Prix. They introduced a minor floor update to the French Grand Prix in an attempt to clear the midfield. The update revolved around changing the angles of the floor and add some new wings underneath the car to improve the Venturi effect, reduce drag, and improve airflow. So how did Alonso do with these new updates during the French Grand Prix? Alonso was comfortably in 7th position until Leclerc crashed his car and Alonso moved up to 6th. He finished the race with a 10-second lead over Lando Norris and 14 seconds on his teammate Ocon. After the race, Alonso was content with his race pace and acknowledged that his team is improving the car at an astonishing rate. Alonso did mention that they are still far off the pace from the front runners and that they have to keep improving. To get a clear view of how Alpine has improved this year, I compared data from the first race in Bahrain to the race in France 4 months later. During the first Grand Prix, Alonso lost on average between 2 and 2.5 seconds a lap compared to race winner Charles Leclerc. This has been brought down to 1.2 to 1.5 seconds per lap during the French Grand Prix. So far, Alpine has improved themselves the most out of all teams in comparison to Ferrari's race pace. They have been able to do so in just 12 races and continue to gain ground. It is incredible that they have been able to reduce the speed deficit by 50% in just 4 months' time. But there is more good news for Alonso. Before the budget cap, Alpine spent $235 million a year on their F1 team. This in contrast to $450 million for Ferrari and Mercedes, and it is easy to understand why Alpine never had a real chance of building a race-winning car. 2022, just like in 2021, sees a budget cap, which has been set at $140 million for the year plus 3.6% extra to account for inflation. The budget cap levels the playing field and make it come down to innovativeness and knowledge of the engineers. It is impossible for any team now to have double the resources available compared to another F1 team. When Alpine can gain 1.2 seconds in just the last 12 races, then there is reason for Alonso to be positive about the future. At the 1st of July, Alpine set at the 5th place in the Constructors' Championship, which allows them 90% of the aerodynamic CFD allowance. This in contrast to Red Bull and Ferrari, who only get 70 and 75% of the CFD allowance. This means that Alpine gets significantly more wind tunnel time and have more chances of developing their car at a faster rate. So will Alonso ever have a real chance of winning another Grand Prix? Alpine's developing rate so far is certainly promising. They closed in 1.2 seconds compared to Ferrari's race pace, and it seems more improvements are coming for Alonso and his teammate. However, these cars see a steep learning curve, but it is the final couple tenths that are difficult to find, but matter the most. There is no doubt as to Alonso's talent, and although he is 41, he still drives like a young driver. If Alpine is able to close the gap to 0.3 tenths of a second in the next year to come, there is no doubt that Alonso's talent will be able to overcome the rest and find his way back to first place again.